The casino floor of Station Nexus glowed with strange lights from 100 different worlds, and the air smelled like burning metal. Mixed with sweet alien flowers that nobody could name, Katie Morgan sat at the quantum card table with her worn jacket and tired eyes, watching three Vorkian traders argue over their next bet, and she knew they were about to make a mistake that would change everything. The Vorkians were tall creatures with blue skin and 4 arms, each covered in golden rings that clinked when they moved, and they loved gambling more than breathing. Across from Katie sat something that made her heart skip because it was not a willing player at all. Princess Zara of the Helian Empire sat chained to her chair with silver bonds that glowed faintly in the dim light, and her purple eyes held more fury than fear. The Vorkian captain named Drex had captured her during a raid on a diplomatic vessel 3 cycles ago, and now he was using her as collateral in his games. Katie had been a cargo pilot before her ship got impounded for debt, and now she survived by playing cards with aliens who did not understand human psychology. She was good at reading faces, even ones with 6 eyes or no face at all. Drex slammed his primary fist on the table, making the holographic cards flicker, and he spoke in broken galactic common about raising the stakes. He wanted Katie's ship repair voucher worth 30,000 credits against his holding of the Helian princess. The other Vorkians laughed because they thought Katie had nothing left to bet, but they did not know about the ace she kept hidden. Katie leaned back and pretended to think hard while studying Zara's face, and the princess was watching her with an expression that mixed hope with suspicion. Most humans would walk away from this because taking a princess from slavers meant starting a war with the Vorkian clans. But Katie had never been most humans. She had grown up in the Belt colonies where you learned to fight for every breath, and she hated bullies more than she feared consequences. Katie pushed her voucher forward and said she would take the bet, but only if they played Terran poker instead of their quantum game. The Vorkians did not know human card games. Well, and Drex agreed because he was drunk on fermented plasma and overconfident. They switched to physical cards, and Katie dealt with smooth, practiced movements that came from years of playing in station bars. She gave herself nothing special in the first hand because she needed them to think she was just lucky. Drex won the first round and laughed so hard his translator glitched into static. The second round went to another Vorkian named Kess, who had 3 arms and an eye patch, and he grinned, showing too many teeth. Katie won the third round with a simple pair and acted surprised like she could not believe her fortune. By the 4th round, Drex was certain he had her figured out, and he bet everything, including his claim on Princess Zara. The cards came down, and Katie watched Drex arrange his hand with all 4 arms working independently. He had 3 of a kind, which was strong in Terran poker, but not unbeatable. Katie had been counting cards since the second hand, and she knew exactly what remained in the deck. She had been palming and switching cards so subtly that even the station's security cameras would not catch it, because her fingers moved faster than most species could track. When she laid down, her straight, flush Drex face went through 4 different colors before settling on deep purple. The other Vorkians jumped up shouting about cheating, but Katie remained calm and pointed to the security drone overhead. She had not technically cheated in any way their sensors could detect because her modifications to the deck happened during the shuffle, which was allowed under their own rules. Drex grabbed for his plasma pistol, but Kess stopped him because killing someone over a legal game would get them banned from every station in the sector. With shaking hands, Drex unlocked Zara's chains, and the princess stood slowly rubbing her wrists where the bonds had burned her skin. Katie stood too and gestured for Zara to follow her, and they walked away from the table while the Vorkians cursed in 7 languages. Once they reached the corridor outside the casino, Zara grabbed Katie's arm with surprising strength and demanded to know why a human would risk everything for a stranger. Katie shrugged and said she did not like seeing people treated as property, and besides, she needed the bounty that the Helian Empire would pay for returning their Princess. Zara's expression shifted from anger to something like respect, and she said that Katie was either very brave or very stupid. Katie replied that she was usually both at the same time. They made their way through the station's twisted corridors, avoiding security patrols because Drex would definitely report the princess as stolen. Property Station Nexus was neutral territory, which meant it belonged to whoever had the biggest guns at any moment. Katie led them to Docking Bay 17, where her ship, the Morning Star, sat waiting, and it was a beaten old cargo hauler with more patches than original hull. Zara looked at it with obvious doubt, but followed Katie up the ramp anyway. Inside the ship, Katie fired up the engines while Zara stood in the cockpit doorway watching everything with sharp, intelligent eyes. The princess asked how Katie planned to get past the fork-and blockade ships that surrounded the station. Katie smiled and said she had friends in low places. She opened a comm channel to a Zinthari smuggler named Vex, who owed her a favor from a game 2 months back. Vex agreed to create a distraction. On the opposite side of the station, and within minutes, alarms started blaring about a supposed antimatter leak. The Vorkian ships moved to investigate, and Katie punched the engines, pushing the Morning Star through the narrow gap in their formation plasma. Fire lit up the space around them, but Katie flew like she was born in vacuum, weaving between shots that should have vaporized. Then Zara grabbed a support rail and asked if Katie always flew. This crazy. Katie said only on days that ended in Y. They jumped to hyperspace just as a Vorkian missile locked onto their position, and the station disappeared into streaks of light behind them. In the quiet hum of hyperspace, Katie set the autopilot and turned to face her passenger. Zara was standing with perfect posture despite everything, and her royal bearing was returning now that she was free. She explained that she had been traveling to peace talks when the Vorkians attacked, and her capture had probably derailed months of diplomatic work. Katie asked if the Helian Empire would actually pay a bounty, or if she had just made enemies for nothing. Zara laughed, and it was a strange musical sound that made the ship's instruments hum in harmony. She promised that her father, the Emperor, would reward Katie beyond measure, and also probably try to recruit her as an Imperial pilot. Katie said she preferred to stay independent, but she would take the money. They spent 3 days in hyperspace traveling toward Helian territory, and during that time, something unexpected happened. They became friends. Zara told stories about growing up in a crystal palace where gravity was optional and politics were deadly. Katie shared tales of surviving in the belt colonies where water cost more than gold, and everyone learned to fight before they learned to read. Zara admitted that she had been terrified in the casino, not of dying, but of being sold to someone who would use her as a political hostage forever. Katie confessed that she had not actually been sure her card trick would work, and she had been ready to start shooting if the game went wrong. On the 3rd day, they dropped out of hyperspace near Helion Prime, and the view took Katie's breath away. The planet glowed like a purple jewel surrounded by crystalline orbital stations that refracted starlight into rainbows. A fleet of Helion warships immediately surrounded them and demanded identification. Zara took over the comm and spoke in her native language, which sounded like music mixed with thunder. The warships backed off instantly and formed an honor guard to escort them. Planetside Katie landed the Morning Star in the Imperial spaceport, where it looked like a piece of junk next to the elegant Helian vessels. Zara turned to Katie before they disembarked and said that she owed the human her life and among her people, that created a bond that could never be broken. Katie did not know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They walked down the ramp together into a crowd of Helian nobles and guards who rushed forward to greet their princess. The Emperor himself arrived in a floating throne, and he was tall and regal, with the same purple eyes as his daughter. He listened to Zara's story, and then turned his gaze to Katie with an intensity that felt like being scanned by a targeting computer. He declared that Katie Morgan was now a friend of the Helian Empire, and she would want for nothing as long as she lived. Katie asked if that included ship repairs and fuel, and the Emperor actually smiled. Within a week, the Morning Star had been completely rebuilt with Helian technology, and Katie's personal account showed numbers she had never imagined possessing. But more than that, she had earned something rare in the galaxy, which was the genuine respect of an entire civilization. Zara invited Katie to stay as a permanent guest, but Katie declined because she belonged in space, not in palaces on. The day Katie prepared to leave, Zara gave her a crystal pendant that would mark her as under Imperial protection anywhere in known space. Katie gave Zara a deck of Terran playing cards and taught her how to shuffle. They hugged, and Zara whispered that if Katie ever needed anything, she only had to call. Katie flew away from Helion Prime with a full tank, a fat bank account, and something more valuable than either. She had proven that sometimes the best gamble was betting on doing the right thing, and she had gained a friend who just happened